The Mini 3 Pro has been a huge commercial success since it was introduced. The same cannot be said about the cheaper version introduced a few months later, named simply Mini 3. The new model was a bit too expensive to compete with the Mini 2 as the entry model, and it lacked too many functionalities compared to the Pro version. But DJI has always been very good in marketing, and have just made a couple of moves to make the Mini 3 much more competitive, and to reorganize the crucial lightweight segment of its prosumer line. The Mini 3 was released in December 2022, 6 months after the Mini 3 Pro, at a selling price of about $560, including the same controller as the Mini 2, the RCN1. The older Mini 2 remained in the DJI catalog at $450. It was released 2 years before, in December 2020, but the design is the same as the DJI Mini, released over 3.5 years ago, which is a geological era in terms of drone technology. In general, when a new model is released, DJI keeps the older one for a few months, before replacing it with a new one, as it was the case for the older Mini and for the Mavic Air after the introduction of the Air 2S. Let's see what the Mini 3 offers compared to the Mini 2. The sensor of the Mini 3 is larger at 1/1.3 inches, with a field of view equivalent to 24 mm, an extremely wide aperture of f1.7 and a bitrate of 100 Mbps. The video resolution is 4K at a frame rate of up to 30 frames per second. There is a dual ISO system at frame rates up to 30 frames per second for better performances in high dynamic range situations. The sensor of the Mini 2 is much smaller at 1/2.3 inches, way too small for today's standards, and it is not a good omen for high dynamic range situation and low light performance. The field of view is the same at 24 mm, the aperture is a traditional f2.8 and the bitrate is the same at 100 Mbps. Video resolution is also the same at 4K up to 30 frames per second. Both models have only the 8-bit normal color mode. In terms of video quality, the result obtained with the Mini 2 in easy light conditions were surprisingly good when it was released, but now this model shows its age. Even in easy conditions, the footage has slightly less detail compared to the Mini 3. The structure of the sky is also disappointing. The normal color profile is overly pre-processed and can only stand a very limited amount of color grading. Moving to more difficult situations like footage shot in the direction of the sun, the Mini 3 starts to feel uncomfortable. And in low light this model is practically unusable, as the tiny sensor is not able to gather enough light. At the time it was a big challenge to keep a drone under the crucial threshold of 250 grams, and DJI had to seriously compromise by shaving weight in every component. The Mini 3 is the result of over 2 years of research and experience in lightweight drones, and the footage quality is certainly in a different league compared to the Mini 2. It does deserve the label of prosumer drone. The bigger sensor and the extremely wide aperture gather enough light for astonishing results in night footage, and even the performance when shooting in the direction of the sun is decent. It also has the ability to rotate the camera by 90 degrees for vertical video and photos, a very important selling point for users active on social media platforms. With photos, the results are similar to the ones for footage. The Mini 2 behaved decently in easy light condition, with slightly less detail and some luminance noise. But things get worse in shot against the sun and falls off a cliff in low light. The fuselage and the area around the gimbal in the Mini 3 have been redesigned in a much more efficient way. It has better aerodynamics, it feels more powerful, and doesn't have the annoying jumps of the camera when coming to a halt after a move. Something that happened very frequently with the Mini 3 and with other previous DJI models. The noise level is much lower, and this makes the Mini 3 an ideal drone for urban flying. The announced battery life of the Mini 3 is 38 minutes, versus 31 for the Mini 2. The Mini 3 completely outclasses the Mini 2 in all departments and can be considered for semi-professional purposes. Only a few months ago the new model was $110 more expensive than the Mini 3, but still I was strongly suggesting it to anyone seriously interested in video and photos. The Mini 2 was only suggested to first-time users on a strict budget. But recently DJI has dropped the price of the Mini 3 and the difference compared to the Mini 2 is now just about $20. Also, it is possible to purchase the Mini 3 without any controller for an even cheaper price, a very interesting option for users who already own another DJI model. Even though the Mini 2 is still in the DJI catalog, it doesn't make sense to maintain the two models, and I expect the Mini 3 to become the new entry level of the prosumer line. DJI has still listed the Mini 2 SE, a downgraded version of the Mini 2. It has the same specs as the Mini 2, but a lower video resolution of 2.7 at 30 frames per second and an extremely low bitrate of 40 Mbps. The Mini 2 SE sells for $340 with a RCN1 remote controller, $130 cheaper than the Mini 3. We don't know as yet if the Mini 2 SE will be discontinued soon, but it cannot even remotely compare to the Mini 3. It has to be considered a cheap entry model for people wetting their feet with drones. Looking at the other side of the DJI line, the Mini 3 was not particularly competitive against the Mini 3 Pro. At first the difference in price between the two models was about $200, but the Pro model offered a lot more. The body of the two models is practically the same, the only major difference being the presence of three-dimensional obstacle sensors in the Pro model. This is an extremely important feature. Not only the obstacle detection system of the Pro model is a crucial safety device, but it also enables an array of intelligent modes, including the very popular tracking. The Mini 3 Pro offers three excellent modes grouped under the name Focus Track, Spotlight, Point of Interest and Active Track, as well as Master Shots, Quick Shots and Hyperlapse. These modes are not only for beginners, but also very frequently used by professionals to quickly get smooth, faultless cinematic footage. The only automatic mode offered by the Mini 3 is Quick Shots. Both models have the same 8-bit normal color profile, but the Pro model also offers a 10-bit one, this in alike, which has been constantly improved via firmware updates and performs now quite well in high dynamic range situations and responds better to color grading. The bitrate of the Pro model is a whopping 150 Mbps versus 100 for the Mini 3. This results in less compression in the files and better performance in post-production. The image streamed from the camera to the controller in the Mini 3 Pro has a resolution of 1080p, versus 720 for the Mini 3. Both models have a real photo resolution of 12 megapixels, but the Bayer quad sensor can split each pixel into 4 smaller ones, therefore achieving a so-called 48 megapixel mode. This mode was at first available only on the Pro model. Even though it should not be considered a true 48 megapixel resolution, it has been constantly improved and now has some real advantages in easy light conditions in terms of extra detail and for large prints. But the tiny resulting pixels cannot gather much light, so this mode is not particularly useful in high dynamic range situations and in low light. Recently, DJI has added the 48 megapixel mode to the basic Mini 3 to bridge the gap in the offerings of the two models. There are also a couple of instances where the basic model performs better than the Pro. The only major weak point of the Mini 3 Pro is the signal, despite the more recent OcuSystem 3 transmission system compared to the OcuSync 2 in the basic model. Apparently, the culprit of the disappointing signal is the position of the antennas. housed inside the wings. To solve the issue, DJI has added a couple of small feet at the end of the wings of the basic Mini 3. The antennas are now inside the feet, and the transmission has indeed improved. The announced battery life of the Mini 3 is 38 minutes versus 34 for the 3 Pro. This is due to the energy saved by the lack of obstacle sensors and by other features. The segment of lightweight drones below 250 grams is probably the most important one. A few months ago there was some confusion in DJI lines with 5 different models from different generations. The Mini 3 Pro, Mini 3, Mini 2, Mini 2 SE and Mini SE. It was not easy to decide which one to buy. After the recent changes, the lightweight line makes much more sense. The choice is now between the Mini 3 and the Mini 3 Pro. The difference in price is much wider, $470 versus $760, with the RCN1 controller. The remaining question is which one to choose. The more expensive model deserves its label Pro. It is a true powerhouse, with a host of very useful features, like the obstacle avoidance system, intelligent flight modes, a flat color profile, and hyperlapse capabilities. But the basic Mini 3 with a lower price and the availability of the 48 megapixel mode is very tempting for users on a budget. The majority of the extra functionalities of the Pro model are useful for filming. But for users interested mainly in photography, the Mini 3 is a very competitive option, although they have to do without the excellent hyperlapse capabilities. Click on this link to watch my comparison of the Mini 3 versus the Mini 3 Pro in terms of video quality and functionalities. And don't forget to hit the like button if you find this video interesting. Thank you.